The observation deck of the Sovereign Harmony hung suspended in the void between solar systems. Through its transparent walls, Ambassador Thesira of the Quilvan Republic watched distant stars flicker like dying embers. Her crystalline fingers trembled as she held the data tablet containing reports she wished were lies. Thesira's species had evolved on a gentle world of warm seas and peaceful skies. The Quilvan had never known war. Their greatest conflicts involved debates over artistic interpretation or philosophical disagreements solved through meditation and consensus. They built cities that floated on water and created music that could be felt in the soul. Violence was something they studied as an ancient relic, a stage of evolution they had thankfully surpassed. Now that peaceful existence was ending in fire and screams. The Vrethak swarm had arrived in Quilvan space 3 planetary rotations ago. At first, the Republic's scientists thought they were observing a natural phenomenon, perhaps a strange asteroid field or cosmic dust cloud. Then the first colony went silent. When scout ships investigated, they found nothing but bare rock where a thriving settlement of 8 million souls had existed just days before. The Vrethak were not conquerors seeking territory or resources. They were consumers. A hive consciousness spread across billions of individual organisms. Each creature was part of a greater mind that knew only hunger. They devoured everything organic, breaking it down to fuel their endless reproduction. Planets that had taken billions of years to develop life were stripped clean in mere weeks. Thesira activated the communication console. The holographic display showed the current state of her home system. Quilvan Prime, the heart of their civilization, was surrounded by a writhing mass of biomechanical horrors. Millions of Vrethak ships, if they could even be called ships, swarmed through space like locusts through a grain field. Her people were dying. The Republic's defense fleet, designed for scientific exploration and peaceful trade, was being torn apart. Their ships had shields meant to protect against radiation and micrometeorites, not against creatures that could chew through hull plating with diamond-hard mandibles. Weapons designed to disable and capture were useless against an enemy that felt no pain and knew no fear. Thesira had watched the recordings. She had seen Quilvan vessels surrounded by Vrethak organisms, their elegant curved hulls covered in writhing bodies. She had heard the final transmissions from ships as they were consumed, the screams of her people as the swarm broke through and flooded their decks. The images haunted her dreams. The Galactic Union had convened an emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Assembly, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. There were the Morphani, beings of living liquid metal. The Keshan floated in tanks of methane gas. The Torvik existed as patterns of energy barely visible to most organic eyes. All of them listened as Thesira pleaded for intervention. The Galactic Union had been at peace for 17,000 years. War was considered a primitive concept, something barbaric species engaged in before achieving enlightenment. The Union's philosophy was built on cooperation, understanding, and the belief that all conflicts could be resolved through dialogue and reason. The Vrethak swarm did not care about philosophy. High Arbiter Grenthos, a being resembling a floating cluster of bioluminescent spheres, delivered the Union's decision with genuine sorrow in his modulated tones. The Union would provide humanitarian aid. They would send evacuation ships. They would offer sanctuary to Quilvan refugees. But military intervention was beyond their capability and against their principles. Thesira felt something break inside her chest. Humanitarian aid, evacuation ships, as if there would be anyone left to evacuate. The Vrethak moved too fast. Quilvan Prime had perhaps 4 more rotations before its shields failed completely. After that, 9.7 billion souls would meet the same fate as the colonies. She stood alone in the observation deck after the session ended, staring at nothing. Her reflection in the transparent wall showed a being whose crystalline skin had lost its natural luminescence. Stress and grief had turned her normally brilliant blue surface dull and gray. She looked old, though her species aged slowly. Fear did this. Helplessness did this. Then Thesira remembered something. A restricted file in the Union archives. A system that had been quarantined rather than welcomed into galactic society. A species classified as dangerous and placed under observation protocols. The Sol system. Earth, humans. Thesira had read the reports out of curiosity years ago. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, one of the most hostile planetary environments in the known galaxy. Its gravity was crushing by galactic standards. Its atmosphere contained a corrosive gas called oxygen that most species considered toxic. The planet experienced regular weather patterns violent enough to level cities. Its oceans teemed with predators. Even the microscopic life was hostile, with diseases that had killed billions throughout human history. Yet humans thrived there. More than thrived. They became the apex predator on a world full of apex predators. They were persistence hunters who could track prey across vast distances without rest. Their bodies could function in temperature ranges that would kill most species. They healed from injuries that would be fatal to more delicate beings. They were stubborn, aggressive, and terrifyingly creative when threatened. The Galactic Union had made contact with humanity 18 standard cycles ago. The first diplomatic meetings had been tense. Human history was soaked in blood. They had fought each other for thousands of years over territory, resources, ideology, and sometimes for reasons that made no sense to other species. They had developed weapons of horrifying efficiency, nuclear devices that could vaporize cities, biological agents that killed through invisible plague, chemical weapons that dissolved flesh, but they had also achieved wonders. Their art moved the soul. Their music transcended language barriers. Their literature explored the deepest questions of existence. They had united their fractured world under a single government, through diplomacy and compromise. They spoke of peace and cooperation with genuine conviction. The Union debated what to do with humanity. Some argued for immediate integration. Others wanted continued quarantine. They compromised by allowing limited contact, while restricting human expansion beyond their home system. It was meant to be temporary while the galaxy figured out how to deal with a species that was simultaneously beautiful and dangerous. Thesira accessed the restricted files. She read reports on human military capabilities. Their warships were brutal angular things covered in armor and weapons. No elegant curves or artistic design, just raw functionality built around a single purpose, to fight and win. Their soldiers trained constantly for combat. They had entire academic fields dedicated to studying warfare, strategy, and tactics. The reports included psychological profiles. Humans bonded intensely with those they considered part of their group. They would risk their own lives to save others, even strangers. They had a concept called heroism, where individuals sacrificed themselves for the greater good. They told stories glorifying warriors who stood against impossible odds. They also had something the reports called spite. When threatened or challenged, humans became more dangerous, not less. They refused to surrender even when defeat seemed certain. There were countless historical examples of human forces fighting to the last individual, rather than submit to conquest. They had a saying, victory or death. Thesira made her decision. The Galactic Union could not help her people. Perhaps the species they feared could. She composed a message. It took hours to get the tone right. How did you ask for help from beings you had kept isolated? How did you beg monsters to fight other monsters? In the end, she kept it simple. She explained what was happening to her people. She included data on the Vrethek swarm and their capabilities. She provided coordinates and tactical assessments. Then she added something personal. We are dying, Thesira said to the recording device. My people are peaceful. We have no warriors. No weapons that can stop what is coming. The galaxy has turned away from us because they evolved beyond violence. But evolution does not matter when something wants to eat you. If any humans receive this message, I am begging you, please help us. We have children who will never grow up. We have families being torn apart. We have a civilization that will vanish from existence in days, please. You are our last hope. She encrypted the message with coordinates to Earth and sent it through the quantum communication network. It would take the signal several hours to reach the Sol system. Then she would wait and see if the Deathworlders answered. Thesira returned to watching the stars. Somewhere out there, her homeworld was fighting its last battle. Somewhere in the darkness, billions of her people were looking up at the sky and praying for salvation. She had asked monsters for help. Now she would discover if those monsters had hearts. The message raced through space at faster than light speeds, carrying the desperate hope of a dying civilization. It pierced through the quarantine barriers around the Sol system and activated emergency protocols at Earth's Unified Defense Command. Alarms sounded in the headquarters buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Night shift officers scrambled to their stations. Communications specialists verified the signal's authenticity. Within minutes, the message reached the desk of someone with authority to act. General Rebecca Stone sat in her office reviewing supply reports when her assistant burst through the door without knocking. That alone told her something serious had happened. Lieutenant Harris was normally the epitome of military discipline. "General, we have an incoming distress call from outside the Sol system," Harris said breathlessly. "It is from the Galactic Union. They are asking for military assistance." Rebecca stood slowly. The Galactic Union asking humans for military help was like a vegetarian asking a wolf for hunting advice. It meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. "Show me," she ordered. They watched Thesira's message together. Rebecca's expression remained neutral throughout, a skill developed through 3 decades of military service. Inside, her mind raced through implications and possibilities. The Union had quarantined humanity, treated them like dangerous animals that needed to be contained. And now they wanted help. The tactical data told its own story. The Vrethak swarm was massive. Millions of hostile organisms with capabilities that matched or exceeded many human weapon systems. They had already destroyed multiple civilizations. Conventional Union forces were completely ineffective. It was a suicide mission. Any reasonable military analyst would recommend against intervention. The risk was enormous, the chance of success uncertain, and Earth owed these aliens nothing. They could ignore the message and let the galaxy handle its own problems. Rebecca thought about her daughter. Emma was 8 years old and loved drawing pictures of friendly aliens. She had been so excited when first contact happened, imagining all the friends humans would make among the stars. Then the quarantine had been announced and Emma had cried, unable to understand why the aliens did not want to meet them. "Lieutenant, get me the Security Council on emergency conference," Rebecca said. "Authorization code Stone 7 Alpha. Tell them we have first contact gone critical and need immediate decisions at the highest level." She looked at the frozen image of Thesira on the screen. The alien's crystalline features showed such profound grief and desperation. Rebecca had seen that expression before, on the faces of civilians caught in war zones, on refugees fleeing violence, on anyone who had lost everything and had nowhere left to turn. "Also activate the Expeditionary Response Fleet," Rebecca added. "Full combat readiness," Cruz recalled from leave. "Prep for possible immediate deployment. If we are doing this, we will do it right." Harris saluted and left. Rebecca sat back down and pulled up files on the human fleet. Earth's warships were built during the resource wars, when nations fought over the asteroid belt and outer planet mining rights. They were designed for void combat against other human vessels. Heavy armor because human weapons could punch through most alien materials. Massive engines because humans could survive high acceleration. Weapons that ranged from kinetic railguns to plasma cannons to good old-fashioned missiles with nuclear warheads. They were not pretty. Alien ships looked like works of art. Human ships looked like flying bricks covered in guns. But they worked. They had been tested in battle against other humans, the most dangerous opponent in the known galaxy. The Security Council meeting lasted 4 hours. Representatives from every Earth nation debated whether to intervene. Some argued for isolation, pointing out that the galaxy had rejected humanity. Others argued for pragmatism, noting that a threat this large would eventually reach Sol system if left unchecked. In the end, it was Rebecca who settled the debate with a simple question. What kind of species do we want to be? Humanity had spent its entire history fighting. Nation against nation, ideology against ideology, sometimes just tribe against tribe for no reason except ancient grudge. The wars had been brutal. Millions had died. Earth still bore scars from conflicts that solved nothing. But humanity had also spent that history helping each other. After every disaster, people from around the world sent aid. After every war, enemies eventually made peace. Humans had a capacity for violence, yes, but also a capacity for compassion that transcended boundaries. The vote was close but decisive. Earth would answer the call. Rebecca received authorization to deploy the Expeditionary Response Fleet with full combat authority. She had carte blanche to do whatever was necessary to neutralize the Vrethak threat. The politicians would handle the diplomatic fallout later. Right now, people were dying and Earth had the means to stop it. She composed a response to Thesira's message. It was brief and direct in the way military communications tended to be. Ambassador Thesira of the Quilvan Republic. This is General Rebecca Stone of the United Earth Defense Command. We have received your distress call. The Expeditionary Response Fleet is being deployed to your location immediately. Estimated arrival time is 53 hours. Tell your people to hold on. Help is coming. Earth out. The orbital shipyards above Earth blazed with activity. For 18 months, the massive military installations had operated on minimal crews, maintaining warships that had no wars to fight. Tonight they burned with light and purpose as thousands of personnel mobilized for deployment. Captain Jackson Rivers stood on the observation deck of the UES Valiant Fury and watched the controlled chaos. Cargo shuttles ferried supplies from Earth's surface. Personnel transports delivered crew members recalled from leave. Maintenance crews swarmed over hull sections, completing final checks and repairs. The shipyards looked like a disturbed hive, every part moving with urgent coordination. Jackson was 42 years old with close-cropped black hair showing the first hints of gray. His dark skin bore faint scars from the Jupiter Station uprising, where he had earned his command. He had joined the military during the resource wars when corporations had hired private armies to fight over asteroid mining rights. Those had been dirty conflicts with no real winners, just exhausted combatants who eventually agreed to stop shooting each other. Now he was preparing to lead his ship into a fight that actually mattered. "Captain, final crew complement is boarding now," reported his executive officer, Commander Patricia Okafor. She was Nigerian-born with sharp features and sharper tactical instincts. Jackson had specifically requested her for this mission. "What is our status?" Jackson asked. "All primary systems are green, weapons fully loaded and tested. Reactors are running at optimal efficiency. We have enough supplies for 6 months of independent operation." Patricia consulted her datapad. "Marine contingent is at full strength. Fighter squadrons are loaded and ready. We can launch in 4 hours," Jackson nodded. The Valiant Fury was a heavy cruiser, one of Earth's most powerful warship classes. 800 meters long and bristling with weapons, she was built to absorb punishment and deal it back tenfold. Her hull was composed of layered armor, designed to withstand kinetic impacts and energy weapons. Her reactors could power shield strong enough to deflect small asteroids. But it was her weapons that made her truly dangerous. Railguns mounted along her spine could accelerate tungsten slugs to incredible velocities. Missile batteries carried everything from conventional explosives to tactical nuclear warheads. Point defense lasers could track and destroy incoming threats with computer-guided precision. And in close quarters, plasma cannons could turn enemy ships into clouds of superheated gas. "How is the crew handling the news?" Jackson asked. Patricia smiled slightly. "They are ready, sir." Most of them are actually excited. They joined up to protect people, and now they finally get to do it. Jackson understood that sentiment. Military service attracted a certain type of person. Some joined for the structure and discipline. Others sought adventure or wanted to escape difficult circumstances. But many joined because they genuinely wanted to make a difference, to stand between innocence and harm. For 18 months, Earth's military had been frustrated. They had trained for combat but been denied any opportunity to use those skills. The quarantine meant humanity could not explore, could not expand, could not prove themselves to the galaxy. Morale had suffered as talented people wondered if their skills would ever matter. Now they had a mission. A real enemy threatening real people. It gave purpose to all those years of training. Jackson made his way through the ship talking to crew members at their stations. In engineering, Chief Petty Officer David Kim supervised the reactor cores. David was Korean-American with a talent for coaxing maximum performance from systems that should not be pushed so hard. "How far can you push the engines, Chief?" Jackson asked. David grinned. "Officially, the specs say we can maintain 0.7 light speed for sustained periods. Unofficially, I can get you to 0.9 if you do not mind the reactors running hot. Will it be safe?" "Safe is relative, Captain." "Will we explode?" "Probably not." "Will some systems need serious maintenance afterward?" "Definitely, but we will get there fast." Jackson clapped him on the shoulder. "Do it. Every hour we save might mean lives." In the medical bay, Dr. Amara Okonkwo checked supplies and prepared for casualties. Amara was a veteran trauma surgeon who had worked in conflict zones across Earth before joining the military. She had seen the worst of what humans could do to each other. "Doctor, are you prepared for alien physiology?" Jackson asked. Amara looked up from her inventory. "As prepared as possible, given we have limited data. I have studied every medical file from first contact. Quilvan biology is not too different from ours at the basic level. Carbon-based, similar cellular structure. If we take casualties, I should be able to treat them. Whether they will survive is another question. Do your best, Jackson said. That is all anyone can ask. The Marine deck was organized chaos. 200 Marines checked equipment, ran last-minute drills, and prepared for whatever combat awaited them. Their commanding officer, Major Thomas Wright, oversaw preparations with the calm efficiency of a career soldier. Thomas was built like a tank, broad-shouldered and muscular from a lifetime of physical training. He had served in the Europa Rebellion, where corporate security forces tried to suppress worker uprisings in the ice mining colonies. Thomas had been on the workers' side, helping civilians evacuate while his squad held off better-equipped corporate troops. "Major, give me an honest assessment," Jackson said quietly. "Can we fight these things?" Thomas considered the question seriously. The Vrethak are biological organisms, which means they can be killed. The question is whether we can kill them fast enough. They have numbers on their side. We have firepower and training. If we can control the engagement, pick our battles, use our advantages properly, then yes, sir, we can hurt them. And if we cannot control the engagement,
then it becomes a brawl, and brawls are unpredictable.
We might win. We might not. But I will tell you this, Captain. My Marines did not sign up to stand around and watch innocent people die. If we have to fight a losing battle, we will fight it anyway, because that is what humans do. Jackson felt a surge of pride in his crew. These people knew the risks. They had seen the tactical data on the Vrethak swarm. They understood they might not come home, and they were going anyway. The Expeditionary Response Fleet consisted of 38 ships. At its core was the UES Indomitable Spirit, a carrier battleship commanded by Admiral Helen Zhao. The Indomitable Spirit was the largest warship humanity had ever built, nearly 2 kilometers long and capable of carrying 400 fighters in addition to its own formidable weapons. Around the flagship gathered heavy cruisers like the Valiant Fury, fast destroyers built for hit-and-run tactics, and support vessels carrying supplies and spare parts. The fleet also included 8 troop transports filled with Marines and combat engineers. If they needed to fight on planetary surfaces, Earth was prepared for that too. Admiral Zhao was a legend in the military. She had commanded defense forces during the Mars Independence War, when the Red Planet tried to break away from Earth governance. Through a combination of tactical brilliance and diplomatic skill, she had ended the conflict with minimal casualties on both sides. Mars got autonomy while remaining part of the Solar System Alliance. It was the kind of victory that showed true leadership. Now she stood on the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit, watching her fleet assemble. Her crew worked with practiced efficiency, coordinating movements of dozens of massive vessels in close proximity. Any mistake could result in collision and disaster. There were no mistakes. "All ships report ready for departure, Admiral," her communications officer announced. Helen took a deep breath. This was it. Humanity's first major action beyond the Sol system. Their chance to prove they were more than violent primitives. An opportunity to show the galaxy what Earth could do when its people fought for something that mattered. "Open a channel to the fleet," Helen ordered. The communication system connected her to every ship, every crew member preparing to jump into the unknown. "This is Admiral Zhao to all ships. Today we make history. For the first time, humanity ventures beyond our home system not as explorers or traders but as defenders. The Quilvan Republic is dying. Billions of innocent people face extinction. The Galactic Union turned away because they forgot how to fight. We never forgot. We never wanted to use these skills, but we have them and people need us." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I will not lie to you. This mission is dangerous. We are going up against an enemy that has destroyed multiple civilizations. The Vrethak swarm outnumbers us by millions to 1. We might not all come home, but I have reviewed every tactical analysis, studied every report, and I believe we can win. Not because we are smarter or stronger, but because we are human. We are stubborn. We do not quit. And we do not abandon people who need help." Helen's voice hardened with determination. "So here is what we are going to do. We are going to jump to the Quilvan system. We are going to hit the Vrethak swarm with everything we have. We are going to protect those people until they can evacuate or until we run out of ammunition. And if we run out of ammunition, we will use our ships as weapons, because that is what humans do. We stand between the innocent and harm no matter the cost." The bridge crew was silent, hanging on every word. "The galaxy thinks we are dangerous. They quarantined us because they feared what we might do. Today we show them they were right to fear us, but wrong about why. We are dangerous to bullies and predators. We are dangerous to anyone who thinks strength means they can hurt the weak. We are the species evolution taught to fight back. And today the galaxy learns what happens when you threaten someone under our protection. Helen's final words rang with conviction. All ships, initiate FTL jump sequence. Destination Quilvin system. Combat speed, let's go save some lives. Earth out. The Expeditionary Response Fleet activated their faster-than-light drives in near-perfect synchronization. Space around each ship began to distort as the drives carved holes in reality itself. Human FTL technology was not elegant. It did not gently bend space like alien drives did. Instead, it ripped through the fabric of space-time with brute force, creating temporary wormholes that snapped shut once the ships passed through. The process was violent. Reality screamed in protest. Energy cascaded across dimensions not meant to interact. Inside the ships, crews felt brief moments of disorientation, as their vessels existed in multiple states simultaneously. Then it was done. The fleet vanished from Earth orbit, leaving only dispersing energy signatures. They raced through twisted space at speeds that made conventional physics weep. The journey to Quilvin space would take 53 hours at maximum sustainable velocity. Inside the ships, crews settled into the routines of long-range deployment. Jackson walked through the Valiant Fury during the first shift, checking on crew morale. In the mess hall, off-duty personnel ate and talked. The conversation was surprisingly light considering what awaited them. Humans had always used humor to cope with stress. I heard the Vrethak tastes like chicken, one young Marine said. Everything tastes like chicken, another replied. That is the most useless comparison in the universe. Maybe we should bring hot sauce. Make them more palatable. Jackson smiled despite himself. This was good. The crew was nervous but not paralyzed by fear. They were ready. In the observation lounge, a small group watched Earth shrink in the distance. The planet was a blue and white marble against the black void, beautiful and fragile. It was easy to forget how dangerous that world was when seeing it from space. Earth looked peaceful, inviting. Only those who lived there knew the truth. Ensign Maria Santos stood at the window, her reflection ghostly in the transparent material. She was young, barely 23, fresh from the academy. This was her first real deployment. Nervous, Ensign? Jackson asked quietly. Maria jumped slightly, not having heard him approach. Yes, sir. Is that wrong? Not at all. Fear keeps you alert. It is when you stop being afraid that you make mistakes. Did you ever get used to it? The fear? Jackson thought about the Jupiter uprising, about watching friends die, about making decisions that cost lives. No, you just learn to function despite it. The fear never goes away. You just get better at not letting it control you. Maria nodded slowly. Sir, do you think we can win? It was a question Jackson had asked himself repeatedly. The tactical odds were not in humanity's favor. They were outnumbered thousands to one. The Vrethak had destroyed civilizations with far more resources than Earth's 38 ship fleet. But numbers were not everything. I think, Jackson said carefully, that we have some advantages the Vrethak have never faced. They have fought civilized species who forgot how to be dangerous. They have never fought humans. They have never faced a species that evolved to be predators. They are about to learn that there is a difference between winning, because your enemy does not fight back, and winning against an enemy that wants you dead. He looked at his reflection in the window, seeing the determination in his own eyes. We are going to hit them so hard they remember us for generations. We are going to show them what happens when you threaten something humans care about. And even if we do not win, even if we all die out there, we are going to make sure the Vrethak regret ever entering that system. Maria straightened slightly, drawing courage from his words. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Jackson left her there and continued his rounds. The ship hummed around him, a living thing of metal and purpose. Every system working perfectly. Every crew member at their station. They were ready. The fleet raced through twisted space, covering light years and hours. Behind them, Earth continued spinning, unaware of what was happening beyond the stars. Ahead of them, the Quilvin system burned as billions fought for survival against an enemy that knew no mercy. Somewhere between those 2 points, humanity hurtled toward its first major test on the galactic stage. Not as conquerors or explorers, but as protectors. The Death Worlders were coming, and they were really good at fighting. The countdown continued. 51 hours until arrival. 51 hours until the Vrethak swarm learned what it meant to face Earth's children. The Quilven system was dying in stages. Ambassador Thesira watched from the command center on Quilven Prime as another defense platform fell silent. Its shields had collapsed under sustained Vrethak assault, allowing the swarm organisms to attach directly to the structure. Within minutes, they had eaten through the hull and consumed everything inside, from the sophisticated computer systems to the 63 personnel who had manned the station. The tactical display showed red indicators spreading across the screen like a disease. Quilven Prime had 12 orbital defense platforms when the Vrethak first arrived. Now only 4 remained operational, their shields flickering as they struggled to hold back millions of hostile organisms. "How long?" Thesira asked quietly. Defense Coordinator Janthar consulted his instruments with hands that shook from exhaustion. The Quilven male had not slept in 3 planetary rotations, sustained only by stimulants and desperate hope. Platform 7's shields are at 19%. They will fail within the next cycle. Once that happens, the Vrethak will have a clear approach vector to the upper atmosphere. Thesira felt her bioluminescent skin dim further. When the swarm reached the atmosphere, it would be over. They would descend like rain and begin consuming everything on the surface. Every forest, every ocean, every living being. Quilven Prime would become another dead rock floating in space. "Any response from the human fleet?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Janthar shook his head. "Their estimated arrival is still 47 cycles away. We do not have 47 cycles, Ambassador. We have maybe 12 before the shields fail completely." Around them, the command center hummed with frantic activity. Quilven technicians worked desperately to reinforce the defense platforms, rerouting power and trying to buy precious time. Others coordinated evacuation efforts, though there was nowhere to evacuate to. The few remaining Quilven ships were already overloaded with refugees. Billions more had no escape. Thesira had sent the distress call to Earth knowing it was a desperate gambit. She had read the human response, those brief words promising help. But space was vast and time was short. The humans might be coming, but they would arrive too late. "Ambassador, we have a problem," said Communications Officer Praxis, her crystalline voice tight with stress. "Platform 7 is requesting permission to evacuate. Their shields are failing faster than projected. They have maybe 3 subcycles before the Vrethak breach their hull." Thesira closed her eyes. If Platform 7 evacuated, it would create a gap in their defensive perimeter. The Vrethak would pour through that gap and overwhelm the remaining platforms even faster. But if she ordered the platform to stay, she was sentencing 63 people to death. She had become intimately familiar with these impossible choices over the past 3 rotations. "Tell Platform 7 to hold position as long as possible," Thesira said, hating herself for the words. "Prepare emergency evacuation shuttles, but keep them on standby. They evacuate only when the hull breach is imminent. It was a death sentence with extra steps. By the time hull breach was imminent, it would be too late for most of the crew to escape." Thesira knew this. Praxis knew this. Everyone in the command center knew this. The Quilven on Platform 7 would know it too, but they would hold anyway, because billions of people on the planet below needed those extra moments. On Platform 7, Commander Velthis received the orders and felt something inside him settle into calm acceptance. He was going to die today, probably in the next few cycles. There was a strange peace in that certainty. "You heard the ambassador," Velthis said to his crew. "We hold until we cannot hold anymore. Power to shields. Redirect everything non-essential. Life support to minimum. Gravity to 50%. Every ounce of energy goes to keeping those shields up." His crew moved to comply without hesitation. They were frightened, yes. Their bioluminescent skin flickered with colors indicating stress and fear. But they were also determined. Below them on Quilven Prime were families, children, loved ones. Every moment Platform 7 delayed the Vrethak was another moment those people had to live. The swarm concentrated their assault on the weakening platform. Millions of organisms swarmed toward it, a living tide of teeth and hunger. They ranged from small creatures the size of human fists to massive behemoths 10 meters long. All of them moved with disturbing coordination, guided by the hive mind that connected them. Platform 7's shields blazed with light as Vrethak organisms smashed against the energy barrier. Each impact drained a tiny amount of power. Individually, the attacks were insignificant, but there were millions of attacks happening every second. The shield generators screamed with strain. Shield strength at 11%, reported the tactical officer. Veltis watched the swarm press closer. Through the observation ports, he could see individual organisms now. They were grotesque things. Biological nightmares that looked like they had been assembled from random predator parts. Some had multiple eye stalks and serrated mandibles. Others were all tentacles and grinding beaks. A few resembled massive insects crossed with deep-sea predators. All of them were hungry. "Commander, we should evacuate now while we still can," his second-in-command urged. Veltis shook his head. "Not yet. The ambassador ordered us to hold." "We hold." Shield strength dropped to 8%, then 5%, then 3%. And then, impossibly, something changed. The swarm suddenly peeled away from Platform 7. Millions of organisms turned as one and rushed toward the outer system. The hive mind had detected something that took priority over the dying platform. "What just happened?" Veltis demanded. His sensor officer stared at her display in disbelief. Multiple contacts just appeared at the system edge. 38 ships, unknown configuration. They just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Veltis felt hope bloom in his chest like a physical force. "Human?" "Checking signature against database." The sensor officer's hands flew across her console. "Confirmed. The energy signatures match human FTL technology. They are here, Commander. The humans are here." In the Quilven Prime Command Center, every display suddenly showed the same thing. 38 new contacts appearing at the edge of the system. Thesira felt her entire body surge with light as hope and disbelief warred within her. "Confirmed human fleet?" she demanded. "Confirmed," Janthar said, his voice shaking. "Receiving transmission now." The communications channel opened. A human female appeared on the holographic display. She wore a military uniform and had hair the color of iron. Her eyes were hard but not cruel. The eyes of someone who had seen terrible things and endured. "Ambassador Thesira, this is Admiral Helen Zhao of the United Earth Expeditionary Response Fleet. We received your distress call. Sorry we are late." "Permission to engage hostile forces?" Thesira could not speak for a moment. She had sent the message hoping against hope. And they had come. The monsters from the Death World had actually come. "Permission granted," she managed to say. "Thank you. Thank you for coming." Helen's expression softened slightly. "Save the thanks for after we win. All Quilven forces fall back to planetary orbit and maintain defensive posture. We are going to clear some space. Earth out." The human fleet accelerated into the system at speeds that made the Quilven sensors struggle to track them. Their ships did not move with the graceful curves of Council vessels. They moved with aggressive efficiency, like predators closing on prey. Admiral Helen Zhao stood on the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit and watched the tactical display update with real-time data. What she saw made her jaw tighten. The Vrethic swarm was even worse than the report suggested. "Tactical. Give me numbers," she ordered. "Counting approximately 6.3 million hostile organisms in the system," Lieutenant Commander Ryan Foster reported. His voice remained steady despite the astronomical number. "They range from fighter size to capital ship scale. Largest contacts are measuring 1,500 meters in length. The swarm is currently distributed between orbital assault of Quilven Prime and harvesting operations on the 2 outer planets." Helen studied the display. The Vrethic had stripped 2 planets completely bare. Not even bacteria remained on those worlds. Every ounce of organic material had been consumed and converted into more swarm organisms. It was efficient in a horrifying way. What about Quilven defenses? 4 orbital platforms remaining, all critically damaged. Their fleet consists of 17 ships, mostly scientific vessels with minimal weapons. They are falling back as ordered. Ryan paused. "Admiral, the Quilven do not stand a chance against this. If we had arrived even 6 hours later, there would have been nothing left to save." Helen nodded grimly. "Then we arrived exactly when we needed to. All ships, battle formation Delta 4. Heavy cruisers form the spearhead. Destroyers on the flanks. The Indomitable Spirit holds center position. We are going to punch straight through their formation and draw as many of them away from the planet as possible. That will make us the primary target," her executive officer noted. "That is the idea. Commander, we want them focusing on us instead of defenseless civilians. Weapons free on my command. Let's show these things what humans do to bullies." The fleet arranged itself into an aggressive wedge formation, with heavy cruisers like the Valiant Fury at the front. The formation was designed for one purpose: to drive deep into enemy territory and create maximum chaos. It was not subtle. It was not elegant. It was a hammer strike delivered with overwhelming force. Captain Jackson Rivers watched the swarm approach on his displays. The Vrethak organisms moved with disturbing coordination. Millions of individual creatures acting as one. They were already turning toward the human fleet, the hive mind recognizing a new threat. All weapons online and ready, Patricia reported from her station. Targeting solutions locked on the densest clusters. Railguns charged. Missile tubes loaded. Waiting for the word, Captain. Jackson felt the familiar pre-battle calm settle over him. This was what he had trained for. What humanity had spent thousands of years learning to do. The galaxy had forgotten how to fight. Earth never had. All hands, this is the captain. We are about to engage a numerically superior enemy. They outnumber us by thousands to one. They have destroyed multiple civilizations, and they have never faced humans before. He paused. Let's teach them why that matters. All stations report ready. Confirmations came in from across the ship. Engineering ready. Weapons ready. Medical ready. Marines ready. Every system, every person prepared for combat. Captain, we have firing solution, Patricia said. Jackson looked at the approaching swarm. 6 million organisms against 38 ships. The tactical computer calculated their odds of survival at less than 40%. Jackson had never trusted computers to understand human stubbornness. All batteries, he said calmly. Fire. The valiant fury opened up with everything she had. Railguns mounted along her spine fired in rapid sequence, accelerating tungsten slugs to a significant fraction of light speed. The kinetic rounds screamed through space, and when they hit, they did not burn or explode. They simply punched through. The first volley caught a cluster of Vrethak organisms head-on. The slugs tore through biological armor like it was tissue paper. Organisms that had survived for years consuming civilizations were reduced to shattered fragments in microseconds. The kinetic energy was so extreme that it turned their bodies into clouds of flash-frozen organic matter. Across the fleet, 37 other ships fired simultaneously. The combined firepower was staggering. Hundreds of railgun rounds shrieked through the void. Missile pods opened and released their payloads, sending thousands of warheads streaking toward the swarm. Point defense lasers tracked and fired, creating a web of deadly energy. The Vrethak died by the thousands in the first seconds of engagement, but thousands of deaths meant nothing to a swarm of millions. The hive mind reacted with frightening speed. The bulk of the swarm abandoned their assault on Quilven Prime and rushed toward the human fleet. They moved in waves, overwhelming numbers compensating for individual weakness. Small organisms formed a screening wave while larger creatures hung back, using the smaller ones as shields. Incoming swarm, all vectors, tactical reported unnecessarily. Every screen showed hostile contacts converging on the fleet. Helen watched the swarm approach like a tidal wave of teeth and hunger. This was the critical moment. If they let the swarm envelope them, surround them, the battle would turn into a melee where numbers mattered more than firepower. All ships, maintain formation and accelerate. Punch through their center mass. Do not let them box us in. The human fleet drove forward like a spear into the heart of the swarm. It was aggressive, almost reckless, but it worked. The Vrethak organisms were not used to prey that charged directly at them. Their hive mind had to adjust tactics on the fly. The fleets collided. Space became a chaotic battlefield of energy weapons, kinetic rounds, biological organisms, and exploding missiles. The scale was enormous. Millions of individual combatants spread across thousands of cubic kilometers. The void lit up with weapons fire and death. Jackson gripped his command chair as the valiant fury plunged into the swarm. Vrethak organisms swarmed around the ship, trying to latch onto the hull. Point defense lasers fired continuously, tracking targets with computer precision. Each laser pulse vaporized a small organism, but for every one destroyed, 5 more took its place. Multiple impacts on the outer hull, Patricia reported. Armor holding. They are trying to find weak points. Jackson watched organisms the size of cars claw at his ship through the external cameras. They were ugly things, all biological efficiency and hunger. Some sprayed acid that sizzled against the armor plating. Others used diamond-hard mandibles to chip away at the metal. Deploy hull charges, Jackson ordered. Along the Valiant Fury's outer hull, small explosive charges detonated. They were designed for exactly this purpose, clearing boarding organisms. The explosions sent dozens of Vrethaks spinning into space, dead or dying, but more immediately took their place. Captain, we have a problem. engineering reported. They are clustering around the port engine housing. If they breach the thermal shielding, we could lose the entire engine. Jackson made a decision. Helm, roll the ship 90 degrees and fire maneuvering thrusters at full burn. The Valiant Fury rotated on her axis while simultaneously firing every maneuvering thruster on the port side. The effect was like a controlled explosion. Superheated exhaust from the thrusters washed across the hull, incinerating every organism clinging to that section. The creatures flash-cooked in seconds, their biological armor no protection against temperatures hot enough to melt steel. Clear, engineering reported with satisfaction. That did the trick. Across the fleet, other ships employed similar tactics. The UES Relentless Shadow used her plasma cannons to create a superheat envelope around her hull, burning away attackers. The destroyer Swift Retribution executed a combat spin, using centrifugal force to throw organisms into space before cutting them down with point defense. Humans were creative in their violence. It was a skill the galaxy had forgotten. Admiral Zhao watched the battle unfold from the Indomitable Spirit's command center. The tactical display was a chaotic mess of red and blue indicators. Her ships were holding their own, but barely. The swarm kept coming, endless waves of hungry organisms. Launch all fighters, she ordered. The Indomitable Spirit's hangar bays opened. 400 fighters launched in under 90 seconds. A coordinated launch that would have been impossible for most species. Human pilots had trained for years to operate in high-stress combat environments. Now they proved their worth. The fighters were small and fast, two-person craft armed with cannons and missiles. They dove into the swarm like birds of prey, their pilots pushing the machines to their limits. Human bodies could withstand G-forces that would kill frailer species. The pilots used that advantage ruthlessly, executing maneuvers that physics said should not be possible. Lieutenant Sarah Kimura flew her fighter through a cluster of medium-sized Vrethak organisms. Her targeting computer struggled to keep up as she fired continuously, her cannons chewing through biological armor. Her co-pilot and weapons officer, Corporal James Mitchell, designated targets faster than the computer could. 3 on our 6, James called out. I see them, Sarah replied, yanking the stick hard right. The fighter spun nearly 90 degrees in an instant, G-forces pressing both of them into their seats. Sarah lined up on the pursuing organisms and fired. Her shots hit center mass, explosively decompressing the creatures from the inside. 2 more at 10 o'clock high. Sarah pitched the nose up and accelerated. The fighter's engines screamed with strain. She triggered a missile, watching it streak away and impact one of the Vrethak creatures. The explosion sent frozen biomass spinning through space. Around her, 399 other fighters engaged in similar duels. The void filled with tracer fire and explosions. Human pilots fought with a combination of skill, aggression, and sheer determination. They took hits. They took casualties. But they kept fighting. The battle raged for 2 hours. In that time, the human fleet killed an estimated 800,000 Vrethak organisms. It was a staggering number, more than any single engagement in the swarm's history. But 800,000 out of 6 million still left the humans badly outnumbered. The fleet paid a price for those kills. The destroyer UES Thunderbolt was overwhelmed by a particularly large cluster of organisms. They breached her hull in multiple locations, flooding her corridors with hungry creatures. Captain Martinez gave the order to evacuate, but there was not enough time. The Thunderbolt went dark, her crew consumed. 3 other destroyers were critically damaged and had to fall back. The heavy cruiser Adamant Will lost her main engines and was operating on maneuvering thrusters only. Across the fleet, ships reported casualties, damaged systems, depleted ammunition. Helen evaluated the tactical situation with cold military pragmatism. They were winning, but not fast enough. At this rate, they would run out of ammunition before the swarm ran out of bodies. She needed to change the dynamic. Captain Rivers, she opened a channel to the Valiant Fury. I need your ship for a special operation. Jackson's face appeared on her screen. He had a cut above his left eye from where something had exploded on his bridge. What do you need, Admiral? We need to break their coordination. The swarm operates as a hive mind. That means there must be some kind of central control organism, something directing the others. I need you to find it and kill it. Jackson nodded slowly. How do we identify it? Look for the largest organism holding back from combat. Hive commanders do not risk themselves directly. They stay protected and direct from a distance. Find the biggest, most well-defended target and put a railgun round through it. It was a theory based on limited intelligence, but it made sense. Every military force needed command and control. The Vrethak swarm could not be different. Jackson studied his tactical display, filtering for large organisms not actively engaged in combat. There, at the edge of the swarm, hung a creature that made his blood run cold. It was massive, easily 2 kilometers long, with a bulbous central body and dozens of tentacles. Smaller organisms surrounded it protectively. "Found it," he reported, "but getting a clear shot will require getting close." "Very close, then get close, Captain. The fleet will cover your approach." Jackson turned to his crew. "You heard the Admiral. Helm, plot a course to that big ugly thing on the edge of the swarm. Weapons, prepare a full railgun barrage. We are going to kill whatever passes for a brain in this operation." The Valiant Fury broke formation and accelerated toward the massive organism. Immediately, the swarm reacted. Thousands of Vrethak organisms moved to intercept, recognizing the threat to their commander. "All ships, this is Admiral Zhao. The Valiant Fury is making a priority strike run. All available units provide covering fire. Keep them off her." The fleet responded instantly. Every ship with line of sight opened fire on the organisms moving to intercept the Valiant Fury. Missiles streaked through space. Railguns fired in continuous bursts. Fighters dove into the swarm, guns blazing, drawing attention and fire. Jackson watched his ship drive deeper into hostile territory. Vrethak organisms swarmed around them, some getting close enough to scrape against the hull. Alarms screamed as systems took damage. His armor was holding, but it would not hold forever. 15 seconds to firing range, Patricia counted down. Through the external cameras, Jackson could see the massive command organism. It was grotesque, a nightmare of biological excess. The creature seemed to realize what was happening. Its tentacles thrashed and smaller organisms formed a living shield around it. 10 seconds. They are trying to protect it. Weapons, target the center mass of that thing. Load armor-piercing rounds. I want maximum penetration. 5 seconds. The Valiant Fury's railguns charged to full power. Energy coursed through magnetic coils, preparing to accelerate tungsten slugs to velocities that would shame most natural phenomena. In range. Firing solution locked. "Fire," Jackson ordered. 6 railguns fired simultaneously. The recoil was enough to slow the massive cruiser noticeably. The tungsten rounds crossed the distance in a fraction of a second, moving too fast for anything biological to track. The rounds tore through the protective organisms like they were not there. Then they hit the command creature dead center. At those velocities, the rounds did not just penetrate. They created hydrostatic shockwaves that traveled through the creature's entire body. The massive organism literally exploded from the inside, its body unable to contain the kinetic energy transfer. Biological matter sprayed across space in a gruesome cloud and across the entire swarm. Something changed. The coordination vanished. Millions of Vrethak organisms suddenly lost their connection to the hive mind. They stopped moving as a unified force and began acting independently. Some continued attacking, others froze in confusion. A few simply went dormant, floating lifelessly in space. Helen saw it immediately on her tactical display. The swarm's movements became erratic, uncoordinated. Without the hive mind directing them, the individual organisms were just animals acting on instinct. "All ships, enemy cohesion has broken. Press the attack. Target the largest remaining clusters." The battle turned into a slaughter. Human ships that had been desperately holding off coordinated assaults now faced enemies that barely defended themselves. The fleet moved through the swarm systematically, destroying organism after organism. Fighters swooped in for kills on targets that could not effectively fight back. It took another 3 hours to clear the system. 3 hours of methodical extermination. By the time it was done, the Quilven system's orbital space was filled with frozen biological debris, millions of organisms dead, destroyed by a fleet 0.1% their number. The human fleet regrouped near Quilven Prime. They had taken significant damage. 4 destroyers were complete losses. Every remaining ship had suffered some level of damage. Casualties were high, hundreds dead and twice that wounded, but they had won. Ambassador Thesira stood on the surface of Quilven Prime and watched human ships pass overhead. They were scarred and damaged, trailing debris and leaking atmosphere in some cases. They looked like they had been through hell. They looked beautiful. A human shuttle landed near the command center. When the door opened, a female in a military uniform stepped out. It was Admiral Zhao. She walked with the slight stiffness of someone injured but refusing to show weakness. Thesira rushed forward, her bioluminescence blazing with colors indicating overwhelming gratitude and joy. She dropped to her knees before the human admiral. "Thank you," Thesira said, her voice breaking. "You saved us. You saved my entire civilization. How can we ever repay you?" Helen looked down at the alien ambassador. She thought about the Thunderbolt and her crew, about the hundreds of young men and women who had died in the past few hours, about the price Earth had paid to save a people they had never met. "Get up, Ambassador," Helen said gently. "You do not bow to us. We did not come here to be worshipped. We came here because it was right." Thesira rose slowly, confusion and wonder mixing in her expression. "But you lost so many. Your people died for strangers." "Why?" Helen smiled tiredly. "Because that is what humans do. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. We stand between innocence and harm. It is who we are." She paused. "Besides, the galaxy called us dangerous. We just proved they were right. We are dangerous to anyone who threatens innocent people." Around them, Quilvan citizens began emerging from shelters. They had spent days in terror, certain they would die. Now they walked into the light and saw their world saved. They saw human ships overhead and human soldiers helping with rescue operations. Many began to weep with relief and gratitude. Helen watched them and felt the weight of command settle more heavily on her shoulders. Her fleet had saved 9.7 billion lives today, but they had paid for those lives with blood and sacrifice. That was the truth about being dangerous. Violence could be used to protect, but it always had a cost. High Chancellor Morden of the Galactic Council stood in the observation chamber and watched the reports coming in from the Quilvan system. The humans had achieved what everyone said was impossible. They had fought the Vrethak swarm and won. The tactical analysis was stunning. Humanity's 38-ship fleet had destroyed over 80% of the swarm in the Quilvan system. They had employed tactics that no Council species would consider, aggressive maneuvers that risked everything for tactical advantage. They had used weapons specifically designed to kill and destroy, and it had worked. "What do we do now?" Councillor Zextar asked, their geometric shapes spinning with agitation. "The humans have proven they can fight. They killed millions of organisms with a tiny fleet. If they ever decide to turn those weapons on us, who could stop them?" Morden was quiet for a long moment. His species had led the Council for 10,000 years through diplomacy and wisdom. He had always believed violence was a primitive solution to complex problems. But watching the recordings from the Quilvan system, he had to acknowledge a hard truth. Sometimes violence was the only solution. Sometimes monsters needed to be fought by those who remembered how. "We do nothing," Morden said finally. "We lift the quarantine on the Sol system. We invite humanity to join the Council as full members, and we acknowledge that we were wrong about them." "Wrong how?" Zextar asked. "We thought they were dangerous because they chose violence. We missed the most important thing." Morden's eye stalks focused on the image of the valiant Fury, scarred and damaged but victorious. "They are dangerous because they choose to protect. That makes them the most dangerous thing in the galaxy to anyone who would harm the innocent." Morden drafted a message to Earth. It was brief and formal, in the way official documents always were. But beneath the diplomatic language was a simple acknowledgement. The galaxy had judged humanity unfairly. They were not monsters. They were defenders. And the galaxy desperately needed defenders. In the Quilvan system, Captain Jackson Rivers walked through the damaged corridors of the Valiant Fury. His crew worked tirelessly on repairs, patching holes and replacing damaged systems. They were exhausted, running on adrenaline and determination, but they were also proud. They had gone up against impossible odds and won. They had saved billions of lives. They had proven that humanity belonged among the stars not as conquerors, but as protectors. Jackson reached the observation deck where Ensign Maria Santos stood watching Quilvan Prime. The planet was beautiful, a world that had come within hours of death but had been given a second chance. "What do you think happens now, sir?" Maria asked. Jackson considered the question. Earth had revealed itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. They had shown everyone that humans were capable of extraordinary violence when necessary. But they had also shown that violence could serve a noble purpose. "I think," Jackson said slowly, "the galaxy is going to have to figure out what to do with a species that refuses to forget how to fight. We are not going away. We are not going to sit quietly in our corner of space. We are here, and we will stand up for those who need protecting. He looked at his reflection in the transparent wall. Behind him stood a battered warship full of tired warriors. Below them turned a world full of people who owed their existence to human stubbornness and courage. The galaxy spent 50,000 years evolving beyond violence, Jackson continued. They thought that made them civilized. Maybe it did, but it also made them vulnerable. Humanity never forgot how to be dangerous, and today we proved that sometimes being dangerous is exactly what civilization needs. Maria nodded slowly, understanding settling over her young face. We are the Death Worlders, the species evolution taught to fight back. That is right, Ensign. And every predator, every bully, every monster in this galaxy better remember what happened here today. They better remember what happens when you threaten someone under Earth's protection. In the darkness of space, human ships began the long journey home. They carried with them the wounded, the dead, and the knowledge that humanity had passed its first great test. The galaxy had called them dangerous. The galaxy had been right. But they had been dangerous in defense of the innocent, and that made all the difference. The stars burned cold and distant, indifferent to the struggles of organic life. But somewhere among those stars, Earth's children had proven that evolution on a death world created something unique. Not mindless predators, but protectors willing to risk everything for strangers. The Vrethek swarm had learned this lesson the hard way. Any future threat would have to learn it as well. Humanity was done staying quiet. The Death Worlders had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.